This is a story my father told me a few years ago. I asked if I could share it, and he agreed. For context, this was around the late 80s in the UK. My dad was visiting a place called Chillingham Castle for a school trip. As some of you know, or may not know, castles around the UK are well known for being quite haunted. Chillingham is no exception. However, this experience my dad had is quite different to anything I have heard before. There is a courtyard in the center of the castle, and my dad's tour group had been shown around it previously. They had begun to move on to another area of the castle, however my dad had managed to misplace his hat and assumed he had left it in the courtyard. After telling his teacher, he split off from the group and returned to the courtyard and entered it. He quickly spotted his hat on the ground and grabbed it. But when he raised his head to stand up, the courtyard walls were coated completely in dark red blood. The blood oozed down the walls slowly and quite literally was everywhere, on every single wall and even in the windows. Obviously terrified, he ran out of the courtyard and back to the tour group as fast as possible. He told a few of his friends, but no one believed him. The group briefly passed near the courtyard again, and when my dad looked, all the blood had disappeared completely. He said he swears to this day that it definitely happened, and he has no idea how or why. I live in a very rural part of Mississippi. I believe my town has something like 250 people in it. Everybody knows everybody. Weird things have happened before, like animals being slaughtered or going missing, that sort of thing. Naturally, we chalk it up to coyotes or other critters. I'm an avid hunter, so I was heading out to the woods with my bow. I got out a little earlier than usual, so it was still pretty dark. I never minded the woods before, so I planned on relaxing in my stand for a while as I didn't feel like stalking today. It's not too far away from daylight, so the birds and other wildlife are starting to make their morning calls. Usually pretty peaceful, right? I swear to God, in the span of a second, everything in that patch of woods shut up at the exact same time. Dead silence. That alone scared the hell out of me. So naturally, my scared self froze and just listened for anything. My first thought was, oh shit, there's something out here with me, which freaked me out even more. Then I started to think maybe it was a bear or a bobcat, which I still was pretty terrified to meet up with, but at least it gave me a logical answer. I figured I could hear a bear coming, but I knew big cats were renowned for stalking people without them knowing, which scared the daylights out of me. I decided to keep moving towards my stand, post up, and just point my bow down the tree. After what seemed like forever, I finally made it. I shuffled up the stand and pulled out my knife just in case, and just listened. Dawn was definitely breaking now, which made me feel better, but still no sounds of wildlife, which was getting more and more eerie. My stand is perched on the side of a creek. The creek wasn't very deep, like maybe the top of your ankle. About the only sound I could hear was the slight noise of the running water. Then I hear something to my right. It is running fast. I instantly raise my bow and wait, terrified. It's getting closer and louder and louder. I almost screamed when I saw this thing. It literally looked like something out of the movie Dog Soldiers, only more muscular. This thing busted through the brush, ran down the slope and through the creek, and then disappeared on the other side. I have seen a lot of things, but nothing quite like this. I was shaking like a newborn baby. I mean, this thing was huge, like 6'5", 250 pounds. I've seen bears and the like before, but they do not run like that. After that, the sun really started to show and the birds started chirping. I finally calmed myself down and got out of there in a hurry. While I was terrified at the time, it's definitely going to be one of my coolest memories to look back on. I wish I knew what the hell that thing was. The best description I could give is like a werewolf. A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was my first time living on my own, and the apartment block was built in the 1930s. I had been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange, a wooden board which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space lay fractured in two pieces on the ground. I thought maybe the landlord had sent somebody to work in the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone was up there for sure, I knew it. I emailed pictures to the landlord and asked if anyone had been there, with an undertone of annoyance since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you are able to." So I called. She explained that her last two tenants had the same thing happen. She promised she'd replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. and my body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like somebody was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard a dragging sound coming from above my bed. It was as if somebody was pulling a sack of potatoes across the floor above me. I froze, convinced someone was up there. There is no way an animal could make that kind of sound. And after 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light and armed myself with a cricket bat and walked to the bathroom. That's when I saw the new board covering the hole was broken in two again. I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard something else, whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and I could hear one sentence repeated over and over again. "It's your turn, it's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. I was incredibly freaked out. It was 5 a.m. at this point and dark outside. I watched TV to try and unwind, and then a fuse blew and all of my lights went out. My pet budgie Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I had never heard him make those sorts of noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys and ran out and sat in my car and waited until the sun came up. When I began to see people walking their dogs and being outside, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was wide open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went straight to the kitchen to check on Dexter, but he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside, and when I walked into the bathroom, I heard a splashing sound. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out immediately and washed him and dried him. I was so confused and so scared. At around 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night, and she says, "Oh wow, you heard the whisper too?" I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I heard whispering on a few occasions, and twice more the board was broken, covering the hole in the ceiling. Although I live elsewhere now, the landlord recently called me. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about the stuff that's been going on there. Forget it. It's their problem now. I'm done. And this concludes this episode of Tales of the Paranormal. These 3 stories were really great reminders that we may never know where or when we will encounter something paranormal. It can catch us when we least expect it and make for some really great stories to share. I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of the new series I'll be doing, and if you did, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more paranormal related content. Until the next one, see ya.